Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patty Urena, and I am the Coordinator of Education and Outreach at Achieva Family Trust. We have a large group here with us, joining us this morning, and I'm really excited about that. This morning's program is one we've never done before. It's Planning for College for students with intellectual disabilities. And I'm really happy to have two of my colleagues from Achieva join us as presenters this morning. Karen Oosterhuis and Amy Guthrie, the disability advocates and family supports for Achieva, will be our presenters. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. As a reminder, this program will be recorded and put on our website probably by the end of the day, tomorrow afternoon at the latest. So if you want to go back and listen to something or see something, please keep that in mind that it will be posted on our websites. I will be sending out the slides to this presentation probably later this afternoon, so watch for those. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we're going to get to the questions at the end of the program. So, but we will be monitoring them throughout the presentation, but please put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll get to those at the end. And I think that's about it. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Karen, who's going to begin the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. I'm Karen Oosterhuis, an advocate from Achieva's Advocacy Department, and we're going to talk today about planning for college for students with intellectual disabilities. I think we all know that college and career readiness is critical for our youth, and college is becoming an increasingly popular option. So there are currently 12 inclusive college programs in Pennsylvania that welcome students with intellectual disabilities. These programs provide an individualized approach to college. They can be 2 or 4-year programs, and students participate fully in the life of the college. They participate fully in academic life as well, although it should be noted these are not necessarily degree-seeking programs. Instead, students receive a certificate of completion or some sort of non-degree certificate that leads to employment. These programs are aimed at students who have either traditionally not been able to meet the standard admissions criteria for college or who require additional supports in order to be successful in college. Now, this slide provides additional information about each program in Pennsylvania. I'm not going to talk through each one of these programs, but I did want to provide the name of the program and a contact person at each of the colleges and universities. If you have questions about a specific program or want more information, I'd certainly encourage you to contact the persons listed here directly. As Patty said, we will put this on the website, and we'll also offer this as a PDF. So if you're interested in this information, will be forwarded to you. But let's get started talking more broadly about the college experience for students with intellectual disabilities. And my next slide is a little bit of a throwback.
I just want to say one word to you. Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, I am.
Plastics.
Now, it's been about 50 years since this now classic film scene where young Benjamin Braddock, played by Dustin Hoffman, is provided what is perhaps one of the most famously misguided pieces of career advice ever delivered. The scene is a cocktail party Ben's parents have thrown for his graduation from college, and a friend of his parents takes him aside and says he has this one word of advice for him, and that word is plastics. In the film, and even today, plastics is understood to mean a cheap, disposable, and meaningless way of life, boring almost by definition. Who wants to spend 40 years sitting in a cubicle working with plastics? What a joke. But too often, we have attempted to pigeonhole students with disabilities with similarly misguided advice, automatically funneling them into low-level positions made up of repetitive tasks and denying them the opportunity to pursue their dreams. College has long been acknowledged as the gateway, not only to steady employment, but also to meaningful employment. And that's no less true for students with disabilities.
I just want to say one word to you. Just.
Youth with intellectual disabilities who participated in a college program and a vocational rehabilitation program had a 73% higher income than those who received only vocational rehab services. Nearly 80% of students participating in college programs were paid at or above the minimum wage. And of the students employed upon leaving their college program, 90% were in jobs that are integrated and in the competitive labor market. Of course, the benefits of the college experience go far beyond employment. There are other equally valuable experiences to be gained by living on campus, navigating classwork, and fully participating in the college experience.
I told my sister I wanted to come to college, and she was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, I think I can do it."
Kids like us, we don't get into stuff like that.
I look at high school and I felt like kind of undereducated, like I could have done so much more.
Students know what they need. They understand the value of the college experience, and they know that they are capable of so much more.
I told my sister I wanted to come to college, and she was like, "Really?"
In addition to the employment benefits, as I said, the benefits of the on-campus experience are well documented. Things like learning to manage your time, balance your meals, care for your living space, get along with roommates. Any student benefits from opportunities to gain or refine these skills. For students with intellectual disabilities, especially, the opportunity to live truly independently with their peers is nearly impossible to find outside of the college environment. For these students, college offers a very rare and truly invaluable opportunity to experience independent but supported living. So where do we start?
No, silly. I go here.
You go where?
Harvard. Law school.
You got into Harvard Law?
What, like it's hard?
So getting into college may not be hard, but it does require foresight and careful preparation. As with any student, preparing a child with intellectual disabilities for higher education is a process that should begin very early. You're going to want to, by virtue of being here today, I'm sure a lot of you already know some of the things that I'm going to talk about, but you're going to want to advocate for inclusive practices. Make it a point of talking about life after high school, speaking specifically about college. Have your child participate in their IEP meetings as early as is appropriate, and that can be long before transition age. Understand their strengths, weaknesses, likes, and dislikes, and make college exploration a part of the transition plan. Research the various programs, like on that earlier slide that I showed you. You know, will your child want to be close to home or farther away? Will they want a rural or urban setting? Will they want a large university or small liberal arts college? These are all things to sort of start thinking about. Again, the transition process, of course, starts at age 14, but that's not to say that you can't start thinking about things earlier. Make sure the IEP team knows your child plans to attend college. Use person-centered planning and enable the student to participate in developing goals based on their own unique strengths, interests, and abilities. You know, it's really important that students have an understanding and awareness of these their strengths, interests, and abilities for themselves, so that they understand where they need accommodations and how to request support. Think about what transition goals you might include in an IEP that can only be met in a traditional college setting. Now, why is that specifically important? I'm going to spend a minute on that. Because students with IEPs are entitled to education through age 21, it's possible to use dual enrollment in college admission as a transition program. So your student possibly could be enrolled in their public school district and use an inclusive college program as the transition program. So you might want to discuss funding for an inclusive college program as a transition program with your IEP team. And to help you make the case for that, you're going to want to think about what transition goals you might include in an IEP that can only be met in a college program. These are, in addition to dual enrollment, these are other ways, public sources of money for funding a college education for students with intellectual disabilities. So the Office of Vocational Rehab, Medicaid waiver funding, federal financial aid. These students qualify for that like any other student might. Again, dual enrollment Secondary resources that some students have access to, Social Security, scholarships are a possibility. And then families are, of course, going to have to bring some money to the table privately. So you're going to want to think about starting as early as possible in terms of saving through tax advantage savings plans like ABLE accounts or 529 plans. These are some of the things that HAB waiver can be used for in terms of campus living. So if your student needs to better understand safety on campus, do they need assistance with sort of laundry or housekeeping, understanding how to keep their dorm room neat and tidy? Do they know time management? Do they have a good routine? Can they get themselves up and off to class on time? What kinds of health and wellness supports might they need? Do they need assistance in navigating campus? Do they understand where to go to access the supports and the buildings that they need? Do they have a mentor or some sort of companion on campus? The HAB waiver can sometimes fund that. And then financial management. Do they understand how to keep their money safe? Do they understand how to keep it secure? Are they able to budget? Or is their dining card going to run out at the end of the month? Again, a lot of these things totally common to college students everywhere. I know a lot of this is a lot of information all at once. If you're feeling overwhelmed, remember that this is a college planning program through Achieva. We can help you plan. We provide opportunities like IEP review. So we can look at your IEP and think about, are these transition goals college focused? Where are the gaps in skills, and what recommendations can we make perhaps to buffer a student so that they can successfully enroll in college experience? Has your district sent students to inclusive college programs before using dual enrollment? And if not, maybe we can help. Is your IEP team supportive? And again, if not, like perhaps we can come up with, we can help with the building of a transition plan and collaborate with the IEP team to help them make that happen. When it comes to things like admissions and actually visiting colleges, Achieva can help. We can provide connections to existing programs, introductions to program directors and admissions teams, connections to current families and students who are currently enrolled, and then again, that financial piece. No one makes the case for college better than the students themselves. So I have one more video to leave you with. I do thank you so much for your time and attention today. And you will also have an opportunity in just a few minutes to hear from my colleague, Amy Guthrie, who has lived experience as a parent of a college student in an inclusive college program.
A lot of high school teachers tell a lot of students with disabilities that they can't go to college because they have one, which is not true because we're people too.
I've always wanted to go to college ever since I was in high school. And after we had the interview, I was accepted. That changed my whole life forever.
So I found out teachers and the students, they've been really amazing here.
Personalize and design classes to fit the students' needs.
The students persevere through challenges. We're really challenging them academically. For a lot of them, much more than they ever have been before.
I feel really independent because I have the responsibilities of living on my own.
I'm feeling good to get away from my parents.
Students are living and hanging out amongst their peers. We have students in everything from Greek life to doing club sports. That's exactly what inclusion is about.
I was more worried about me, being at home by myself. They have the support system if I needed it.
College is a good thing to do, to make friends, to be independent. My whole family went to college and they want me to go to college.
But we have several students doing an internship or job placement, so not just a grocery store.
My goal for Casey is for her to live independently and have a job that she loves.
My dream is to work at Google.
I want to go into healthcare.
Be a teacher and be around kids.
There isn't a roadblock that I see out there for a student who truly wants to go to college.
Don't be afraid.
And work hard. Work really hard.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I guess I'm up. Let me share my screen. And okay, hopefully you can all see that. So my name's Amy Guthrie. I am Karen's colleague in the Achieva Advocacy Department. And this is my son, Ben. He really wanted to go to college, and so we made it happen. So this is a little bit about how that worked out for us. So hopefully you can use that to help you and your young person fulfill their dreams as well. So as Karen mentioned, transition planning begins officially at age 14 in the special ed world, but really it's never too early to start thinking about these things, because you want to make sure that your student is advocating for themselves, looking at learning about what their strengths and their needs are, and just knowing what all is out there. So I felt like the main things that I went back to over the years were person-centered planning, nurturing strengths and interests, especially with respect to post-secondary education, employment, and independent living. Those are the three parts of an IEP transition plan for those of you who have reached, if your student is 14, you've covered that piece in the IEP. So it's important to have a goal for each of those sections, and then think about what both can happen at school, but also just in general to build those experiences. Because I remember when my son was 14 and they said, well, okay, time for transition. I'm thinking, he doesn't know what he wants to do yet. What 14-year-old does, right? But you can start thinking in terms of what those strengths are. Encouraging extracurricular activities was something that I really focused on. I mean, my philosophy is just basically have him experience as many different things as he can, and stick with what is good and move on from the stuff that wasn't so great. So he has always really liked music, so we pursued his participation in the high school marching band and art clubs, and so different extracurricular activities in addition to, of course, the academic piece. And I also like to emphasize that it's really important to use your family connections, your family network. Do you have a friend who, a family friend, or somebody in your church, whatever, who has a business where your student could volunteer, or just any type of opportunity that could be useful. Resources that are available, couple of key ones. Number one, PATN, the Pennsylvania Department of Education's, it's called Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network. So their website is extremely helpful, and you'll get these slides so you can, just the links are embedded, but their information on secondary transition is really helpful. Transition Discoveries is a newer website that is also extremely comprehensive. And then, it's important to remember that your school district transition coordinator is a wealth of knowledge and resource. The tricky thing is transition planning is, it feels overwhelming because there's so much to it. And so you have to just remember to kind of do it in bits and pieces, break off little bits and kind of deal with that and seek out assistance. And eventually it'll all fall together. And then I always like to kind of throw in my third point here, high expectations paired with appropriate supports, because I think as parents with disabilities, we all unfortunately come up against that at one time or another, there's always somebody who's kind of like, wow, you know, we don't want to frustrate him or whatever. And, you know, no, we don't, nobody likes to be frustrated, but at the same time, if you don't have high expectations, then nobody's going to rise to the occasion. So the idea is to kind of have those expectations, but with appropriate supports to make the student successful. So this is straight off of the Patton website. Highly recommend it. It's a checklist that I only did the first page, but there's a backside to this document. So you can see that it's broken down for the age. So what's age appropriate, and then you know, the domain. So the top row is education after high school, employment, and then community living and independence. So it's kind of nice because it again, when your 14-year-old is in an IEP meeting and you're thinking, we don't know what he wants to do. He doesn't know what he wants to do. This kind of makes it feel more manageable. Oops, okay, so things that we did with my son. Again, you know, we did lots of different extracurricular activities, from social groups such as Friendship Circle, Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, art classes. He was in the marching band, you know, tried. And so if it's a school extracurricular activity, then the IEP team can address supports for that extracurricular activity. So that was something that we kept in mind. This is just a little picture of him in one of his classes. And then this was something that we did, you know, again, I talk about your personal network. Our church does a dinner at the local soup kitchen one Monday a month. And so we would go and volunteer at that, so that he was getting practice with food service, just to see what that was like, because I wasn't really sure if that was even really an area of interest to him, plus just kind of the social interaction, you know, following directions. So these types of things that are listed here can be embedded, you know, throughout whatever activity you're doing. But these were types of things that we tried to keep in mind when we were, you know, developing the IEP. So you get to senior year, what's next? And basically, as Karen mentioned, you know, students who have mastered their IEP goals may be ready to accept their diploma after 12th grade. For students who have not mastered their IEP goals, then it may be appropriate to have the student, quote unquote, bank their diploma and continue to receive special education programming up until age 21. So what do you do if you're, you know, done with 12th grade and, you know, you still need services? You do not need to continue going to classes in your high school, because that's no longer age appropriate. So there are programs for students, you know, in that age range, they've finished, and when they bank the diploma, they can actually walk with their high school class. You know, that's what my son did. He did all the graduation stuff, you know, senior pictures and prom and everything. Went through graduation, and then he just did not receive the diploma at that point. And the IEP team considered the options. So basically your options are, I mean, there's others, but these are the main ones that I'm talking about today. You can do a school district run program for students between ages 18 and 21. Or you could actually, if the student, if what the school district offers is not appropriate, then the team might want to actually consider, you know, just direct enrollment into an inclusive college program for students with an intellectual disability or developmental disability. That's what that means, by the way, in case people are not clear on that. ID is for intellectual disability, DD is developmental disability. And the programs that we're talking about today really are tailored for that population. So in our case, my son was not ready to just launch into college at that point, but we're in Pittsburgh Public Schools, and the City Connections program was a perfect fit for him. This program has 6 classrooms across the city, and 2 of those classrooms are located at the CCAC Allegheny campus on the north side. But all of the students in the program, in whichever location they're in, they get experience in educational, employment, and independent living goals, or they work on those. So they could be, they all get a $40 a month stipend so that they can open a bank account, use a debit card, practice, subtracting the money out of the little ledger, so that they can, and then they use that money to do activities in the community. They can get travel training to take a bus or take the T, and even just for, walking, we did that. We started with that. So they want to make sure that students are totally safe, and they would, the team develops a route. And if it's just, even if it's just crossing a street or whatever, they'll do travel training for that. The advantage to being at the CCAC location for City Connections was that it was easier for Ben to take 2 classes. So he started off there the fall of just 2017, I have to think back now. And that fall was more about kind of getting acclimated. And then in the spring of 2018, he took the PASS class, which is actually an OVR funded class. And it's sort of how to be a college student, so that was a good experience. And then in the fall of 2018, he took a reading class. He had to take the placement tests, and he placed into a developmental reading class. So that's what he did. He, had to talk to the registrar, talk to the people in student services about how to get accommodations, how to schedule, so that he could take tests in the student services and have them read to him. Like, all of that stuff was really great practice for him. In addition to just kind of going to class, talking to the professor, that sort of thing. So, he did that. And then once he turned 21 in 2019, so he, officially accepted his diploma and still wanted a college experience. So we started looking at programs. And one thing I forgot to mention is that, you all along the way, starting in high school, you want to make sure that you've got your agency involvement, and your school district transition coordinator is well versed in this. They will know, but it's, important to be aware. So Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, they have services for students, the pre-employment piece that they, kind of how to, do a resume, how to do an interview kind of thing. They also have paid work experiences, which are awesome because the student actually gets paid. You work with a job coach at a site, and this, it's for, say, I think my son's were 90 hours. And we stretched it out. So while he was at City Connections, 1 day a week, he would go to his job site with his job coach. And, so that was part of his schedule. And this is him. He was fortunate to have 2 paid work experiences. One was at the Sheraton in Station Square, and the other one was at Phipps Conservatory. And then, of course, having your supports coordinator. I just put Office of Developmental Programs because I'm not sure what county folks are from. And if you're in Allegheny County, it's the Office of Developmental Supports. But in other counties, it might be called something else. But the state Office of Developmental Programs does this service or supports coordination if you have an intellectual disability or autism. Okay. And then the year that they turned 21, I distinctly felt like we were sort of falling off the cliff, and I wanted to make sure that we fell onto a soft landing. So, you know, you're exiting special education programs. What's next? So we wanted to make sure that, you know, it was as seamless a transition as it could be. So we did what, you know, parents and families of a senior do, or junior, you know, looking for colleges. We visited a few programs. I happen to have relatives in Kansas, so we visited the University of Kansas's TAP program. I really had no intention of sending him that far away at that point, but you know, it was very helpful to see, you know, a program and to have something to compare with. And as Karen said, there are, you know, about a dozen just in Pennsylvania alone, but there are, you know, nationwide, there's like 200 programs. We toured Slippery Rock's Rock Life program, and then also Duquesne University's Compass program, and that's the one that we decided on. So we, you know, we toured programs, made a decision, did the applications and all of that. All along the way, you want to make sure that you still have your agency folks in the loop. So his OVR counselor and his supports coordinator need to be, you know, in consistent communication with you, so that the documents that are needed for those services can be aligned with his goals. So that includes the IEP while they're still in school, the IPE, which is what OVR does, the Individual Plan for Employment, and the ISP if they're in the intellectual disability system. Then that's that document. So trying to get everything, you know, everybody on the same page, so to speak. So the OVR funding is important because they not only do they help people with getting jobs, but they can also help with the education piece. They can sometimes help with tuition. They can help with assistive technology. They'll do an assessment and, you know, make recommendations and purchase pieces. And that, you know, that's, again, there was that kind of striking this balance, because while he still had an IEP, our school district AT coordinator was involved. But then, you know, once as he was exiting the school district, you have to kind of make sure that OVR is in the loop, so that, because they're going to kind of pick up where the school district left off. So if the student has an intellectual disability and, you know, is able to get the Medicaid waiver funding, that can be used for tuition as well as habilitation services, as Karen mentioned. So that's something, you know, you need to make sure that is in the ISP, and that the supports coordinator is aware and has all of that documented. And then, of course, scholarships is another piece of the puzzle. So being that he was a Pittsburgh Promise student, or Pittsburgh Public Schools student, he qualified for the Pittsburgh Promise. You know, the Dream Partnership is a Pennsylvania organization, and that, you know, has a scholarship. And then Ruby's Rainbow it is for individuals who have Down syndrome. So that, you know, not everybody can apply for that one. So he applied and got accepted to the Duquesne Compass program. And then just a little bit about what that actually looks like, you know, kind of the nuts and bolts of it. It's 6 credits per semester for 2 or 4 years. So he's just completed his 2nd year. So the six credit is defined, that's how they define full-time for this program. And so he started off with, the first semester was 6, he had a 1 3-credit class in his content area. He's very interested. He had I think I mentioned he had a paid work experience at Phipps Conservatory. And once that was over, he just stayed on. They didn't have a position to hire him at that point, so he just stayed as a volunteer. but he really enjoys that. And it's been a big loss during the pandemic. Of course, there's no volunteering, but hopefully he'll get to go back there soon. So anyhow, he because he's interested in plants, our thought was to have him take some biology classes and see if that's further interest, but then of course other classes too, so that he can broaden his experiences. So he's taken a public speaking class. What else has he had? He had an art class, like an intro to art appreciation type thing. He had a music appreciation class that he really enjoyed. There was like a research, kind of like how to do research on whatever, given topic. And that was kind of sort of a freshman level, how to do research class. So that was, they've all been great experiences. The Compass program is very mindful about picking courses that, are aligned with his interests, but also with what professors, kind of have, which classes are best kind of able to make it work. So, because again, these courses are not like these programs, the student will not receive a bachelor's degree. They're going to receive a certificate. So it's understood that, he can take courses with modifications, but it's, because he's not going to get a bachelor's degree, but it's still going to demonstrate his ability, his interest, his growth in that area. So, for example, they tried having him take an exam his first semester in biology and realized that that's not the best way for him to demonstrate his learning. So then they had him for his final, he had to present a PowerPoint on, kind of all of the topics, sort of pulling it all together to make connections between what he learned in class and what he wants to do with biology. So another crucial piece of the program are the peer mentors and tutors. At Duquesne, many of them happen to be from the occupational therapy department. So it's kind of a great fit because these are folks who already kind of have an awareness about needs for accommodations. But, they're also peers, so they can kind of hang out, they can, go to whatever, do whatever campus event happens to be, happening. So, for example, I think she was the president or vice president of the swim club, was one of the peer mentors. And so she got my son and the other student involved in the swim club, and that was just wonderful. They loved it. They got to go to a meet, and of course that was all last year before the pandemic, but it was just really fun for them to get to be on a college swim team. What else? Crucial component of the program are the internships. And so hopefully once things are opening up, there will be more opportunities for internships in the fall, post-pandemic. And once that is more in effect, then he'll be 1 3-credit class and 1 3-credit internship. They have an option to live on campus or commute. One of the students is living on campus. We opted for Ben to commute just because I felt like it was too much too soon to try to do everything. So we started with that. And then, with the pandemic, we didn't want him to live on campus either. So he's a commuter for now. And then there's actually a third student who started this year. She's actually from Minnesota. So she has been fully remote for this year, but she'll be coming to campus next fall. And this program is wonderful about doing person-centered planning. They really, have been very conscientious about thinking about that, and they even had an independent study in the first semester that he took to really work on, how do I set a goal, and then how do I accomplish that goal, and that kind of thing. So it's been a really good part of the program. And I think that is it. So yeah, that's all. That's my last slide. So if anybody has any questions, I think we can. I know somebody had asked if the Achieva's advocacy services, if there's a fee, and there is not. You can simply call our intake line, which is extension 486. So the main number 412-995-5000, extension 486, and ask for assistance, and Karen or one of the other advocates can assist you.
Amy, it does look like there are some questions. If you and Karen can address them, I'll let you know what they are. The first one is medical ID waiver also available to students with autism, or just ID?
So the, I don't have the exact language, so I don't want to say it wrong. It has to be, they have to meet a level of care, I think is the term they use. So somebody who needs like significant care in their activities of daily living, safety, communication, things like that. So they may not have, ID basically means their IQ is 70 or below, but also needing, having delays in adaptive skills, whether that's safety, communication, that kind of thing. So the ID waiver, if the person has autism, but meets that level of care need, then I think they can get it. But there is an autism waiver, which is different. So yeah, that's a whole other webinar.
Okay, next one, and I think you addressed this, Amy. How do you find scholarships in your area? Is there anything more than what you mentioned earlier?
Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, for me, I had never even heard of the Ruby's Rainbow. Somebody that was sort of like a word of mouth thing. So I'm not sure. I would say talk to transition coordinator at your school. Talk to the folks in these programs and see what they know about scholarships. They might have some pointers on what ones to apply for. So yeah, I don't know
Amy,
off the top of my head.
Okay, and there's one about how old was Ben when you started visiting colleges? Just this registrant's curious about the timing to get this started.
You have to make me do math here. He was 20.
Okay.
I think we were it was like 2018, like that winter 20.
So how old was he in that year?
He would have been 20. Yeah.
About 20. Okay, this person's daughter was 15. So that's why they were asking. Okay, so he was about 20. Does Social Security help pay for college?
I am not sure. I think well, of course there's SSI and SSD, and there are different rules. So, that's probably another webinar unto itself too. I would say SSI can pay for living expenses, but I don't know that it can pay for tuition. So I would say, to be safe, I don't know, but that's the best I can do. And I would say call Achieva Family Trust.
I was just going to say, I'm not familiar with that either. And I'm not aware that they help pay for college. But you could always contact your Social Security office and they may be able to help you, or I can find the answer. If at the end, whoever asked that question wants to email me, I'd be glad to find out for you. And my email will be up at the end.
Yeah, somebody put in the chat that it did not pay for college.
Yeah, I didn't, I had never
There's
been aware
living
of it.
expenses.
Right.
It might pay for certain living expenses, but I don't think it would pay tuition.
Okay. So another question about the college program, do some students move on to a degree earning path?
Well, that's a great question. And they could, I think there's always that possibility. If you have somebody who, starts off really kind of needing some support, but, they're in a program where they can handle the curriculum and, then they potentially could go into a degree program. But students, generally speaking, these programs have, students with an intellectual or developmental disability. They may not be able to. If it's a student who, say, is on autism spectrum and they don't have an intellectual disability, but they need help kind of with that executive functioning, organization, management type stuff, they may just want to go straight into, the degree program, but to try to bring in some supports. Like around here, there are a couple of organizations. There's Evolve Coaching that may be an option to help. I know one individual in particular who, meets with his Evolve coach like once a week to talk about things. And there's another newer one called Strive, I want to say. And I'm pretty sure that OVR can pay for Evolve. I don't know if they'll pay for Strive at this point, but so for students who, again, don't meet the criteria in terms of having an intellectual developmental disability, they can handle the degree program curriculum. That might be an option. It's just to kind of enroll and then, try to get supports through a program like Evolve Coaching.
Okay, great. And just going back to the Social Security SSDI for college, that was brought up that they don't pay for college, but it was also brought up in the chat box that individuals need to look at the WIPA representative at SSA and ask for work incentives. So that's an option. And then someone else just mentioned, we have such a great audience today. In Pittsburgh, OVR will pay for Evolve Coaching in college. So, and I personally at the Trust, we've worked with Evolve Coaching. They're fantastic. So, but it looks like in Pittsburgh, they will pay for coaching in college, or OVR will pay Evolve for coaching in college.
Yeah.
Amy, is there anywhere where people can get information on dual enrollment?
I would, I guess, just in general, reach out to your school district, your transition coordinator. They would be the go-to, I think, for that. To, like, we had to do dual enrollment when my son took his reading class at CCAC, because again, he was still a school district student. And so there was somebody to help with that, like, in fact, somebody right on the CCAC campus that helped with it. But it would depend on your school district, I think. So I would start with your transition coordinator.
Okay. Does OVR cover all tuition fees?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how much they'll pay.
Okay. Okay. When attending one of the colleges, does FAFSA provide the Pell Grant and student loans for the ID individuals?
Yeah, in fact, you do have to apply for that. You have to go through that. Well, we had to go through for, was that? Yeah, it's all getting mixed up in my head. I'm sorry. We had to do it. Maybe that was for the Pittsburgh Promise, though, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, I think you do need to do that. To go through the FAFSA, yes.
Okay. Yes, basically, yes. Okay. Yes. Does OVR assist with private school tuition?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, that I'm not sure. And then someone just asked me to repeat the SSA comment.
Patty, But I'm sorry, if private, I had a question about, to clarify the private school question. I mean.
Oh, please, yes.
Duquesne technically is a like, are you talking about, I'm not sure if this person's talking about the distinction between a state college and a private university, because Duquesne technically is a private college. So OVR does fund, the Compass program at Duquesne.
They will. They don't yet.
But if you're,
because it's not, they don't have their CTP, stands for Certified Transition Program. They're still kind of in the application process. But once that's approved, then yes, you're right. I agree with Karen.
But if it's I'm not sure what the sort of, so I mean, yes, but all of these things are so individualized. I want people to understand that it really does come down to a lot of times an individual family's finances. There's no sort of blanket answer, unfortunately, but I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, Karen. And I was just asked to repeat the SSA comment that one of our registrants brought up. She said that they need to look at the WIPA representatives, or contact, I guess, the WIPA representatives at SSA and ask for work incentives. So I hope that makes sense. Please let me know if it doesn't, and I can even ask the person who answered that question to maybe be a little bit more specific. Right now, I'll go on to the next question though. Would it be safe to say that specialized college programs are less reading intensive than, say, Hiram G. Andrews? A lot of my IDD consumers haven't been able to go to Hiram G. Andrews because they can't read textbooks. So are the college programs less reading intensive?
I would say, I mean, it varies. It probably varies on what courses the student opts to take. And I'm not really familiar with Hiram G. Andrews. So in terms of, what their reading level expectations are, but I would say that it's definitely individualized. So for a student who, whose strengths do not lie in reading, they'll figure out ways to, accommodate, whether it's, working with a tutor, assistive technology, whatever. I mean, so probably yes, I would say, but it varies again from program to program and student to student. And so.
Okay. And
sorry if I could just add, the majority of these programs right now are really quite small. Slippery Rock program is the biggest. I think they have, maybe 15 to 18 students right now. But so a student could ostensibly end up in a program with only, 2 or 3 students, which is quite a bit of individualized attention and an ability to really personalize these programs with regard to things like reading instruction or other skill levels.
Okay. And then we did have a couple comments. Someone did comment that FAFSA can help for the CDP programs. So that was brought up. And then someone also, in regard to the scholarships, someone mentioned or put in the chat that they Googled for scholarships information like on Facebook, and they found a Families Think College on Facebook, like a site that's really helpful in finding information. And it does seem like you can find a group for anything on Facebook. So maybe that's a place. It looks like it's called Families Think College that is on Facebook that someone used. And then the last.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Think College is a great resource. That's sort of the national resource for these types of programs. So that's, yes, excellent suggestion.
Yeah, and again, thank you to all the people listening out there offering this advice and obviously things that they're very familiar with. And the last comment made was that rehabilitation vocational can help with tuition. Training is the goal to get ready. If training is the goal is to get ready for work.
Yeah.
So any other questions out there? I'll give a couple more minutes, but again, I want to thank Amy and Karen. Thank you both so much for this presentation. It was fantastic. And I really appreciate everyone that joined us this morning. We had a large group. And again, big thanks to a couple of the individuals out there who answered a couple of these questions for us. And I think, like Karen said, like everything, so much of this is probably individualized to your child, and there's probably no like playbook that says this is what you should do at this age, this is what you should do at your age. I know I've heard, you guys and other advocates say it's, you know your child better than anyone, so it's best to let them kind of lead. And let me just see, it does look okay, so it doesn't look like there's any more questions, but I did want to remind everyone that this webinar has been recorded and will be put on our Achieva Family Trust website in the next few business days. And that's just www.achievafamilytrust.org. I will send out the slides later in the day. And, if you have any questions, my email is p.urena@achieva.info. And please just, reach out and let me know. And one last question that came up. I know we were talking about college, but what about getting a child into high school that is succeeding? I'm not sure if I know.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
I'll just say that, please do email Patty, but also, Achieva Advocacy provides IEP support and other supports for students with disabilities sort of across the educational lifespan. So feel free to be in touch, and we're happy to answer your question more directly.
And I put my email address up there one more time as well. And, in the Achieva Family Trust, we're not advocates, but I can reach the advocates. I can pass your questions on to those that I'm sure can help answer. And we do have some contacts at Social Security. So if there's any more detailed questions about Social Security and even OVR, we have contacts at those organizations that we can all work together and get some more specific questions answered. So that would be great. And then I know Amy just put up the Achieva Advocacy intake number as well. So you all have that information.
Yeah.
Anything else, Karen or Amy? No. Well, thank you both so much for presenting for us this morning, and thank you all for attending. Take care. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.